is up, everybody? It's that time of the week again. We're here with episode 2 of the One Tap Gaming Podcast. As always, my name is Solemn. With me, I have my beautiful co-host, Rumz. What you got going today, bud?
What's going on, everybody?
And Smith'll say what's up.
Hey, everybody.
And this week, we've got some interesting topics to go about. We are on time this week. It's a first for everything. But we do have an interesting show. This week, I had school. School began. I had first couple of classes. Assignments are pouring in already. I think I've got 15 assignments due this weekend or something like that. So, no, that's not too bad. I'm finished with about a third of them so far. It's not, the end of the world. Most of it's hands-on. We get a lot of class time to do our stuff. But it's no slouch trying to get that degree, let me tell you. So.
Yeah, I don't miss the schooling days.
Exactly. Other than that, this week, I've really kind of been focusing on practicing, playing a lot of specific things in Valorant Ranked, trying to focus more on the entry role, specifically things like Phoenix, Reyna, try to fill that void, I guess, in our play group that seems to always be absent. It's not too bad so far. Smith, I want to hear about your week.
So week went pretty well. I mean, obviously, you guys know since we play together pretty regularly. I'm officially out of bronze now in Valorant. Now, that's not saying I'm going to stay out of bronze for very long, but at least at time of recording, I am out of bronze and into silver. You guys convinced me to improve my skills with Aim Lab finally, so I've been in that practicing a little bit. Then the big thing this week, and I know you guys were all part of it, but I wanted to bring it up in case anybody listens to this and comes across it, is we had a very interesting incident of cheating that occurred in the game we were in. And so basically what happened was we're playing a match, and about 3 rounds into it, there's a message that comes across chat, and it starts with @Valorant. And then there's this message that is written very well and very eloquently that says essentially something like, a player in this game recently had action taken against it by riots, anti-cheat system, yada, yada, yada. This game will not be recorded or counted towards your rank, even if you forfeit. Something like that. And, there was a couple people on the team that were like, oh, well, let's just forfeit. That way we're not wasting time. We can jump into another rank. But luckily, myself and Dana, who plays with us very frequently, were like, this seems a little fishy. And Dana noticed whenever you scrolled up in chat, the individual basically put 10 to 15 lines of just blank text and space. So their name kind of got scrolled out of the text window. And so we weren't able to easily tell that they sent it. So luckily we didn't forfeit and we still won. But in case anybody's listening and sees this, be careful if you see people try to pull the same move, because it was very convincing. We just luckily didn't listen.
Yeah, we were down about 6 or 7 rounds at that point, so it was super satisfying to come back and win.
Yes, that was great. Overtime win was great. And always, the Vanguard should lock the game and show you the red screen and kick everybody out should an action be taken against a player while you're in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if somebody tries to tell you that, it's just a prank, impersonating Riot in any way, shape, or form is against TOS, and you should report them. Other than that, Smith, I know we've been playing a bunch of FF recently. Final Fantasy 14, for those who don't know, that's our MMO of choice. Sometimes we have to separate ourselves from the competitive sludge that is Valorant every now and then. We get a little tilted and have to go off and do something different for a few minutes. So I know we got some levels in there. Rumz, I think you've had some interesting ranked experiences this week.
I have been plagued with the smurfing and a bunch of smurfs, Papa Smurf, just all over my game. If you think gold, high silver, high gold was bad enough, gets worse when you have diamond or immortal smurfs that are smurfing down at gold, whipping around corners and one-tapping people. So that's been about the majority of my week.
Yeah, I remember specifically we were duo queuing against a Reyna, and I got walking strafe one-tapped at least 12 times by the Reyna, who went 42 and 4 in our game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, come on, bro. Come on. Why? Why are you doing this?
So what fun is it for you at that point?
Exactly. I don't get the mindset. I understand tanking an iron account to help a friend push up out of what the elo hell in this game is, which is probably bronze, right? Once you get to silver, you're kind of on your own. You need to push for yourself and try to get better. But pushing past those teammates that are in the game to troll or queued rank just because they wanted a shiny picture next to their name or something, that sludge is hard to get out of sometimes. I don't understand that. But if your queue's 10 minutes long, why are you trying to smurf into gold where you're not going to enjoy the game by just running over everyone? How is that fun at that point to not be challenged?
I mean, I get part of that of saying sure, you're not challenged, but I was watching some of the higher level players play, and their queue times weren't just 10 minutes. They're looking at 30, 40 minutes
Yeah.
sometimes when you get
Yeah,
towards
yeah.
Immortal and some of the higher ranks. And at that point, I get it, because you don't want to be sitting there for an hour just to play a game that's going to last 30 minutes and then wait another hour. So I get the need for a Smurf. I think, honestly, if Riot just broadened the range of some of these higher level elos or ranks, it could make it better. Because sure, you may have somebody that's not quite as skilled in the same rank as you.
I think it's important to make the delineation between Smurf and alt. For example, Wardell has about 5 accounts, and I don't know that I'd consider any of them Smurfs because, well, 4 or 5 of them are Radiant, and the one that he's on now is Immortal 3. So I don't really call that a Smurf as much as it is an alt. The issue lies is when you have somebody who's Diamond Immortal, and they make an account where they're down in those lower elos. That's a true Smurf. And to me, that compromises the competitive integrity of the game. That's just something that I don't really care for or enjoy.
I agree. Yeah, no, it's kind of nuts. I think I was watching Shroud's stream, now he's finally back on Twitch, and he's talking about it. I think that they need to implement a wider range for the Radiant and Immortal 3 range as ranks. Right now, I think the maximum Radiant you can have in a region is like 150. It's the top 150 players. But there's no reason once you hit into Radiant to play on that account anymore until you get your like Dorito chip or whatever it is, like your 9 wins. Maybe they add like a top 500 system, like Overwatch, where you have like the Radiant players are ranked 1 to 1200 or whatever it is. But they definitely need to kind of like open that valve and let more players kind of move their way into that rank to speed up those queue times for the Immortal 3 plus games, or even high Immortal 2 plus games, so that people don't feel the need to make all of these extra accounts just to play the game they want to play. It's kind of bogus. I get it. I was Masters in Smite.
They've kind of pigeonholed themselves at the Radiant level to those 30-40 minute queue times. And I think just opening it up a little bit, I get they want to keep Radiant exclusive to the top players, but honestly, it's harming the competitive integrity for the lower elos than it is helping the rest.
What would you think if they did something along the lines of what you see in other Riot games, where it's you can play certain rank modes with full teams and certain rank modes with, maybe single or duo stacks?
Or like a trio and a 5-stack queue. I think that'd be fine. I think the solo queue should probably be separated, and then you have a duo trio queue and then a 5-stack queue. And I think once they hit a certain number of players, they're definitely going to consider implementing something like that. But I don't actually know how many active players the game has right now. I don't know if they've actually published it somewhere.
Is that a thing in Counter-Strike?
Counter-Strike's rank system is the worst rank system I've ever played with in my life. Like, Valorant took Counter-Strike's rank system and said, okay, we'll slap some stuff on it and hope that it works. Where they don't like notify you how far along you are in the rank, if you're on a promo game, how many more games you need for a promo game, where your elo's going up or down and by how much. None of it is clear. I like the LP system that League has, where they say, all right, you're at 99 LP, you're on your promos. When a promo, you move up. So on and so forth.
I still think they should do what Rainbow Six does. It's just a bar chart, or like a giant line, not a bar chart, and you just see, like, here's the elo number, here's an elo number, and here's the rank icon.
Yeah.
And exactly where you fall in every match. You watch it move up and down, so you know exactly how far you have to go, and you get your rank and you get your individual elo number, which is great.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some changes they can do, and they've said that they're working on it. Riot's, every time they've said they're working on something for this game, it comes out pretty well. They kept their word. The devs, they know what they're doing. I'm gonna let them do their stuff. I'm not that worried about them keeping their word. I just wish it would be a little bit faster, but they're humans. Cut them some slack. I'm still having fun for the most part. I might get a Smurf like 1 out of every 5-10 games. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and move on to our main topic of the week, so we don't get kind of stuck on that. We're gonna try to introduce this new idea really quick before our main topic, which is our quick tip of the week, kind of like the life hack for the games. This is kind of goes hand in hand, because after those Smurf games, you might get a little tilted. You might get a little salty or a little jaded at the game that you're playing. And a lot of people, when you go and you're like, oh, I'm just going to play another one, and you're tilted and you play awful and you end up tanking your rank, and nobody likes to do that. So when you're tilted, I'd suggest, take a step back, 5-10 minutes, vacuum your room, do some push-ups, jog around your house, hang out for just a second, read an article, watch a YouTube video. What's some of the stuff that you guys do to kind of take a breather for just a second, for a 5-10 minute break from a game and then go back to grinding?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, it's 100% what you said. Is you got to kind of keep yourself in the right mindset. This is something that I was big on, especially whenever I played Legends of Runeterra significantly more. Was anytime you go into something tilted, you're significantly more likely to mess up. So me personally, I like to just go get a glass of water, go cool down. Sometimes I'll just queue up and go take a walk, and by the time I get back, the queue pops and I'm ready to go. And I think it really just, like you said, it depends on the match. If you're getting tilted and you're against a real toxic team or a Smurf, it's harder to want to jump back into it and not be tilted versus, if you get a real close match and it was, well played all around. At that point, jump back in. It's fine. You're a lot less likely to make poor mistakes.
So I'm not usually a fan of marathon games. I can usually only play one game a couple of different times. I think Valorant's the only exception where I can play a couple of games and they're, 30, 40 minutes at a time, or I can get a couple of hours of gaming in on just one game. So most of the time, if I get tilted at something, I usually just realize it's not worth it, take a step back, go take an hour break, go watch a show, drink some water, go do something that I need to do, and usually come back at it with a fresh mindset.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is just giving yourself some space from the game, which is important. You see it a lot with like streamers getting angry, throwing stuff. One of my personal favorites, Tim the Tapman, going for his first dub. Ninja, yeah, throwing controllers and beating penguins, all that good stuff. So
remember, if you stop getting angry at the game,
you lose. Yeah, it's a bad mindset. So our main topic for today is smokes, specifically the utility, not smoking. Smoking is bad for you, but smoking sights is good for you, and you should understand how to use them properly. So I've got our different smokes. We got them broken down kind of by agents and what we want to talk about with the different strategies and things that come into play with your team comp. A lot of people might look and see the pro scene. They see Brim, or they'll see Omen, niche picks. They'll see Viper occasionally, but a lot of the times you're wondering why this character on this map, why are they playing this way instead of this way, what angles are they smoking off, all this kind of stuff, and it can be confusing to new players, especially how to smoke properly, which is something that I see a lot of people that don't. It's like you'll say, okay, well, smoke screens, and you just like chuck a smoke, and you're like, all right, they can't see, move forward. It might not be exactly how you're supposed to smoke, quote unquote, properly, is the way that it's kind of turned out. So I kind of want to hit these kind of line by line on our script here where we're talking about it. We have different kinds of smokes that they've implemented in Valorant, which I think is an interesting take on the utility from this traditional like smoke grenade, where you're kind of lofting it in an arc and then hoping it lands and then popping, or in Counter-Strike where you like throw it, hit 24 different walls, the rock on the left, the chicken bumps it because of its walk pattern and knocks it into just the right angle to create a one-way. You don't have to deal with a lot of that in this game because they've taken that away and created these kind of precision smokers in Brim and Omen, and they act differently and play differently based on their styles. And then you also have what I call the half smokers, which have kind of these short smokes that you can use for burst utils like Jet and Cypher. So I want to hear your guys' opinion. Who do you think is the top primary smoker between Brim and Omen?
To me, it's Omen, hands down. The only reason why I say that is because Omen has on board a flash, but regardless of his flash, he has a smoke that recharges every 30 seconds. So if you span those two smokes out, you get 15 seconds out of the one smoke, and then you just have to wait another 15 seconds. If you use them both essentially at the same time or at intervals, then you just have to wait 15 seconds and you have another smoke. So if you play your cards right, you can essentially have one spot smoked off continuously throughout the entire round.
Yeah, that's really, really strong. Smith, what you got?
I'd actually fully agree. I mean, if I'm looking and no agents are selected, team comp selection, and we're picking a smoke first, I would 9 times out of 10 choose Omen. Not only just because of his ability for the smokes to recharge, but with Brim, you're significantly more limited on how far you can place the smokes or what you can do with them. So if you're really trying to split push a map as Omen, you could really set up on the complete other side of the map, throw your smoke across the way, get it in good position for your other teammates, and therefore help support multiple areas for your team, as opposed to Brim where it's a much more condensed range. So it's again, I think it's preference and what else you need in your team comp. But if I'm talking just pure smokes out of the bag, I'm going to pick Omen.
All right, so what if I told you that there are 3 smokers who are equally as powerful as each other, and it's entirely map dependent and composition based?
I mean, I definitely agree. There's for sure maps that are going to benefit, some characters more than others.
Okay.
I think certain maps and comps are going to benefit just based off of the smoker you pick up to. I think a more aggressive comp and execute heavy comp is going to be better with a Brim. But as far as a general rule goes, I would just like the rechargeable smoke.
For sure. One of the things that I'm going to try to bring to attention here is the main comparison between Brim and Omen, obviously. So I think it's entirely dependent on your team's behavior and how they play the game. So a lot of these slower paced teams or even aggressive teams that kind of pick one of the polar options choose Omen a lot because of his flash that he carries. It's this wide AoE, it goes through walls, you can blind 3 or 4 people at a time and they're nearsighted instead of just flashed. So a lot of the times you can throw it, it'll last, those couple of seconds and you can vary your peak times. Whereas a pop flash from something like Phoenix, you can almost kind of predict when they're going to swing an angle, or Breach, and they're going to swing an angle, and kind of try to take them out through that utility. But Brim, I think, is just as powerful as Omen for those teams that are playing chess instead of checkers. So teams like Genji, right? They're extremely execute heavy. They're matured as a team. They're trying to implement these advanced strategies into their gameplays, or this, playbook style play where they have a plan and they have a plan B and they execute based off of the early intel they get within that first 15 to 20 seconds in a round. And to them, that Brim has more power because of the instantaneous multi-angle smokes to get onto a site, which is something that Omen just can't do. Even if you're throwing it across the map, that's, 3 or 4 seconds of travel time. He can throw one at a time and he can throw 2 back to back, but then they fall and settle into place, and then you have to peek off of those and push off of those after they're settled into place. Where Brim, you lock it up, you have your flash set, and you drop your utils and pour onto the site and try to take everybody out.
Yeah, I would agree.
Right. I think with Omen's smoke too is it's hollow, right? So it is something that can be easily pushed up into from a defender. If they're standing near the angle that is smoked, it's very easy for them to just walk a step forward, and then all of a sudden the opposing team can't push up as aggressively on that angle. Because if they try to bust through the smoke, there's going to be an enemy there and they can see you, and they will pick up a couple of kills. Prime example was today. There was a Sage that was inside of an Omen smoke and picked up a double. Maybe it was a triple even, just because she had the wherewithal to step up into the smoke. It was hollow, picked up a couple of kills.
The one thing that I see when we're talking about the difference between Brim and Omen as far as smokers are, and I'm glad that you said with Brim it's basically you want to drop them and then use that to push onto site, is I feel like, especially around the silver to gold elo, maybe and lower, people view all smokes as being equal. And what drives me nuts is a lot of times you'll see somebody pick up a Brim, drop the smoke right away when the round starts at whatever the various, typical entry points are or the starting points are for a match, and then don't do anything with it. They basically say, okay, look, we're going to obscure vision and we're going to sit back, and then it goes away, which isn't such a problem with Omen because, again, they do recharge, but Brim, you have a very limited supply, and Brim's a pretty expensive character to do, so you kind of want to play those smokes very smart of saying, okay, team's in position, we're going to drop the smokes, and then we're going to follow in, we're going to use this as an entry point onto site, as opposed to an Omen that's more or less saying, I'm going to keep, the Opper, suppressed, or I'm going to really try to keep them out of the equation. So, I mean, it's one of those things that if you are playing Brim, don't just drop your smokes and then not utilize them. For sure, if you're putting them down, make sure it's a way for your team to move or get in position or do something like that, as opposed to drop and just shoot through the smoke and hopefully hit somebody.
Yeah, for sure. The third smoker isn't actually like a regular support smoker, right? The two that we're talking about are very support rolled. The third one I want to talk about is Jet. So you don't think of Jet as a traditional, pop smoke for teammates, you can walk through it or whatever, but she's this self-sufficient half smoker. She has one ways on almost every angle because she can position her smoke wherever she wants, and she can throw them out quickly. They last for 7 seconds. She can push through them. She can push out of them. She can make her way however she needs to make her way to get herself out of trouble or to get her teammates into a site. And that's something that a lot of people don't use as much as I think that they should, myself included, when I play Jet, is throw their smokes more liberally, trying to use them as this kind of quick utility in order to turn an engagement once it starts after your primary smoker puts something into position, which I think is something a lot of people don't think of. But I think the biggest deciding factor when playing one, either Brim or Omen, is actually the map. And while Omen is stronger, I think, on almost every map except for Bind and Split, the reason being is because of Brim's ultimate. So Omen's ultimate's good. He can reposition in niche situations, or he can grab some intel by being like a free spy cam directly onto a site, right? He's very precise. But on Bind, you have places like Hookah and U-Haul and teleporters, where if you have your ultimate and you hear one of those audio indicators go off, or if you make a good guess, or if you get some quick peeks on a sight line, you just get a free kill and a free pick on the site that they can't escape or get around. And then from there, you can move on to your site, use your instant smokes, get everybody in, hold your positions, and now your enemy team is a man down because they didn't get an opportunity to trade, and they have to retake on a site through vision obscurity on your retakes, which I think is really good on these kind of close cornered maps or these close angled or close boxed maps like Split and Bind specifically. But on almost every other instance, you want Omen or you want both of them. In some cases, a lot of teams have been using both Brim and Omen at the same time.
And that was something that I was going to mention is you're seeing a lot of teams pulling out both Brim and Omen just because of the unique utility that each one brings to the table. You got that massive paranoia from Omen, and you have the strongest Molly, arguably next to Killjoy in the game, with Brim as well as Open Up the Sky, just clearing out all kinds of angles.
It's absolutely just nuts. Which that goes back to your, team comp and decisions. If you're playing Bind and you know that you're going to lean towards the Brimstone pick for the smokes and for the giant, laser beam coming down to murder everyone, you might want to pick a more aggressive comp. Maybe you pick double flashers and Phoenix and Reyna, or Reyna and Omen, and go for double smokes, and you play a more rifle centric game where you take the op angles away and try to push on a site very quickly. Or do fakes with the Omen smokes and the Brims, and you can vary which ones are which to throw your opponents off the game. Try to play again that game of chess instead of checkers, which is where it kind of has his his little places. And then of course we have the kind of sad smoker, as I'll call it, which is Viper. I didn't forget about her. For everybody wondering if I'm going to forget about her, and I love this character. I love her flavor. I love what she's trying to do, but the way that the game has evolved into these rotation-based games and this kind of adaptability, placing stationary reusable util isn't exactly what you need on the majority of maps. Her strongest map is Ascent, I think, specifically after seeing Mixwell play it a couple of times on stream and looking at some data on how she can just kind of solo hold B by herself with all of her utils and mollies the way that it is. She has a place there, but even then, Omen can block just as many sightlines and has the flash for more team utility and has the ultimate to gain intel. And his ultimate can be used on both offense and defense just as powerfully as any other ultimate on the team. Whereas Viper's ultimate is really good on offense, even though she's a very defense-centric character. So I think that her kit's kind of all over the place at the moment and needs to be kind of rehashed a little bit. But that's kind of where I'm thinking of our sad smoker Viper, kind of where she's sitting right now.
Yeah, like you said, I really love Viper. I love her feel when I'm playing her. I love the ability to chop up dangerous territory. She just doesn't feel like she does any one thing good. I think she does do defensively pretty well. Her post plant's pretty strong if you have an ultimate, but ultimately she just doesn't really have any one thing that's going super great for her.
Yeah, she's very much the jack of all trades, master of none type character. I mean, she was probably my main in the beta phase of Valorant. I loved her. I loved everything about her. I loved her playstyle. I loved everything like that. The one thing that I see a lot of people forgetting when we're talking about smoke, specifically with Viper, is, Solemn, you sat there and said, these stationary reusable smokes aren't in a great spot or whatever the case may be. And I agree, but people need to remember when they're playing Viper to pick up your smoke and bring it with you. If you're using it as, some sort of barrier or some sort of way to prevent the enemy team from pushing onto a site, and you realize that your site isn't in danger, pick up your smoke, bring it with you, and then redeploy it or reutilize it on the new site or in a way that your team can benefit from. I see too many Vipers whenever they're being played that just drop their util and then walk away from it.
Yeah, for sure. And the orb, the orb you can pick up and reposition, that's okay. But her best utility is the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And the wall you place usually at the beginning of the round, or you can wait until you execute, and then it sits there. So let's say we're on split, we're going to execute on B, I drop it to slice heaven up, and then their team is pushing through CT and my wall's not doing anything. Or, I cut off mid, but they rotated around spawn, now my wall's not doing anything. Or, they're already through vents because we have sight, but my wall's in mid. You have to think too many steps ahead to place the wall down, which is where most of our utility kind of comes from, is that wall, because it provides such a big advantage when you can use it properly. But you have to play around it, and once you use it, the other team knows what's going on. And giving away intel, I think, is just not where you want to be right now.
And I think all too often as Viper, you have to use her wall and her other utility as fakes. And I'm not saying that doesn't have its own strength, because it certainly does have its own strength. Mind games are very strong in the game, but it's almost too frequently that you're having to use her wall as a fake. Seems like almost every round the last time I played Viper, I was throwing it towards split heaven on A, and I was doing that every round. And if I did anything different, they would know almost instantly that I'm going to go to the opposite side. So if I walled off heaven of B, then they would know that we're basically going to execute site. I guess I could have just not used it until we were ready to execute every round. I feel like it's so situational that it just doesn't have its own strength.
For sure, for sure. That's kind of the interesting points in where we are as far as these smokes go. And smokes are probably the single most important utility that you can have in your game right now. No matter what else you play, you can vary your sentinels, you could vary your duelists, you could change just about anything else up on your team comp. But smoking and having at least one, if not one and a half, quote unquote, is vitally important. The other half smoker that I have kind of considered is Cypher. His cages on offense are pretty handy as like quick little half smokes, both in size and what they do, and kind of a quick pinch, which a lot of people have figured out and kind of been using, but some people still don't know about. Kind of quick short range self smokes, just kind of like Jet is.
Yeah, I don't think Cypher's cages get enough credit on offense, simply because if you're a Brimstone, you can execute 3 smokes on the site. You can cut off those lines of sight. Nothing is preventing them from moving through those smokes. If you throw down a Cypher cage when you're executing a site, nobody can move through them without at least some sort of visual cue or audio cue that somebody's there. So I think that has its own strength in safeguarding close angles when you're making that first initial push on the site.
Gosh, I remember when cages used to slow. That was dumb. I don't miss it. That was stupid. It was a dumb meta. Everything was just slow all the time, and it was a giant mess in the last 10 seconds of the match. But that's kind of it for our main topic. What we had going on. It's kind of a little quick one shot on smokes. The next portion, as far as the smokes goes, is properly smoking with no matter who you're using. And this is kind of a technical thing where you get to learn to differentiate between offensive and defensive smokes. And this has to do with the nature of every smoke in Valorant being circular for the most part. So all of these circles, right, if you place them at an entrance where the majority of the diameter of that circle is either going onto site or into the pathway is what determines if it's offensive or defensive or not. So if you place it to where the majority of the diameter of the circle, so the outer ring of the circle, is going out of a pathway. So think like C long on Haven, and you're going to smoke to push into the site from spawn side. If 75% of the smoke is on site and the other 25% is just blocking off that pathway, that would be an offensive smoke because it gives you multiple angles to exit the smoke while still obscuring the enemy team's vision, and then they have to make a prediction or a reaction to where you exit the smoke, which gives you an inherent advantage on top of the natural peeker's advantage that the game kind of already has in place. Whereas defensively smoking would leave the 25% on site and 75% back in towards the pathway, so that it limits the amount of space that the enemy gets to push through to make your job easier at reacting to exactly where they go when they come out of that smoke, whether it be on an entryway or a sight line or anything like that, to kind of cut them off of their general game plan. And a lot of people will just kind of chuck it down, and placing it kind of exactly or just slightly skewed or at this off angle and kind of limiting exactly where they can come out of the smoke if they're to come out gives you an advantage as the players watching that new obstacle that you've put into place.
Yeah, and that's something that I see at even high gold. You think people would at least have some sort of grip on how to properly smoke, but even at gold 1, or excuse me, even at gold 3 and below, there's seems to be this thought where if I ask for a smoke on a certain angle, to use your example, C on Haven, if I ask for a long smoke and I'm defending, that smoke will be almost 100% in my own face, which doesn't help me in the slightest. It does obscure the sight line, but that obscures my sight line as well as the enemy's sight line.
Right, and it just makes your job harder.
It just makes my job harder because they have a near 360 degrees where they can launch out of an angle.
Exactly.
And it just doesn't help. So that's a very good point, Saul.
Yeah, and it comes with practice, specifically going into the range and kind of figuring out exactly what parts of the brim, little HUD shows up and where the smokes go when you drop them down, or going into like the maps in a custom map and then placing the smokes or using the sights or just kind of practicing in general. It comes with time. It comes with usages. Properly using utils is the hardest part of this game. It's what separates players from the gold range to the diamond range and above, is using those utils properly. But that's kind of about it. Jet's kind of a different story with the self-smoking. Same thing with Cypher cages. You don't have as much of an opportunity to place those quote unquote correctly, where you want to put them. With Jet, it's mainly learning where to place them on doorways and different entrances to kind of create a pseudo one way for a few seconds, or catching a sight line or a weird off angle that the defense might have to give you an opportunity to like dash or updraft and play the 50-50 guessing game of where's the jet, when she kind of goes to push a sight.
And I want to mention that one way point here for a second, because I think it's very easy for some players to just throw a smoke on top of a doorway and then call it a one way.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true. You have to think about both angles
Right.
on your side and on the enemy's side. So when you're thinking that you may actually be creating a one way, you could be creating a one way for the enemy as well.
Right.
So you need to make sure that you have absolute advantage on that angle before throwing that smoke, because you could be doing more harm than good.
Which is definitely something you don't want to be doing with smokes. So as for that rounds up kind of our topic of the week. Following up, we have our Clutcher Kick, our esports segment. We got some news going on today. Today is August 26th. I didn't say it at the beginning. I forgot. I'm sorry. But that's a Wednesday. That is the beginning of the final Ignition series, PopFlash, which is an invitational, rounding out this kind of NA series of tournaments where they've invited these, like the top 8 teams, I think. Top 8 teams to kind of duke it out in a bracket. And man, do we have some upsets going on today's fellas. So at the time of this recording, it's 9:30 Eastern. So they're in the midst of the last set, which is Immortal versus T1. So I can't really touch on the majority of that set, but we can touch about the beginning of the results of TSM versus Dignitas and Genji versus Cloud9, which were some very entertaining matches to watch, depending on exactly who you're fans of. So quick news flash. We have EU, I think is how you say his name, EEIU. He's a former European player standing in for T1's roster, filling in Skadoodle's spot. If you didn't know, Skadoodle has currently stepped down from the starting roster of T1 to work on his agent pool, kind of readapt to this meta they've got going on right now. I've watched his stream a couple times, some YouTube videos, trying to keep up with him a little bit. He seems to be focusing on Jet. Shocker to literally no one on the planet. He's been doing pretty good, so hopefully we see him back in the next week or two as tournaments start to re-kick back up or the next series comes out or what have you. And then Shanks is the trial opera for Dig. Specifically, they said he is on trial for this tournament, which makes me kind of think of it as a tryout. And from today's performance, he might have landed himself a spot on this Dignitas roster, because man, did Shanks perform today.
Yeah, he really did. He did very well.
All of Dignitas stepped up. I mean, that was a hell of a match. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. Especially with going into it, everybody assuming Dignitas wasn't even going to take, one game away.
Dignitas was actually the bottom seed. They were seeded 8th for this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. And I know we talked about them a little bit last week, and we kind of talked about how they're kind of the newcomers on the scene. And it was one of those things going into it, and especially whenever you're going up against TSM, who everybody's kind of assuming is going to just sweep the floor with them. That's awesome. I being a Dignitas fan was very pleased with the outcome, and I liked a lot of what happened there.
Yeah, specifically you said mopping the floor. TSM actually got waxed. They got rolled over, steam rolled. The first map was Haven. It was TSM's pick of map, which, if anybody's been paying attention, Haven has been their number 1, number 2 map for the entire lifetime of Valorant's kind of competitive play, especially with their aggressive offensive style of play. TSM lost 13-5 on Haven. And then on Dignitas's pick for Bind, Dignitas won 13-4. Just showing them the 1-2. And it's very clear that Dignitas did their homework in this matchup, and TSM kind of fell off. I know, Rumz, me and you are watching this game today at the same time. Would you like to... I want to let you tell the crowd what exactly happened with some of the TSM roster today going into this matchup.
So I came in towards the tail end of the match set, and I'm not exactly sure what was going on. I know for a fact, at least that one member of TSM just didn't get enough sleep. And to me, it's a pretty big thing to just not get before a tournament. Now, I don't know if the player in question couldn't sleep or if he was gaming up until the tournament. I just know that he didn't get enough sleep prior to the tournament. And in any professional sports setting, that's going to set you at a severe disadvantage.
But man, they looked off. TSM looked like they couldn't get anything going. Their momentum was off. Not a single player had a positive KD at the end of the set. Every single one of them dying way more than we see as usual. Specifically, though, we had Def and Shanks kind of pop off this set for Dignitas, which was super impressive because I had not heard of Def. I'd heard of Def, but I haven't gotten to like watch him or keep a close eye on him. And he went to town. It was ridiculous. He dropped 33 kills in the set, tied with Shanks, the newcomer, who also dropped 33 kills, playing Jet on both maps, playing the primary opposition. They even busted out some double ops between the two of them. And Dignitas, they did it methodically, man. They walked through everybody like it was no big deal and played like it was, everybody's even on the blacktop, which in this case they were. It shows that you have to show up ready to play. Anybody can win on any day. And I'm excited to see the losers bracket run from TSM because I think they're going to uncage the beast, but that's just maybe the fanboy inside of me hoping that they do something to redeem themselves for today. So what else did we have here? Following them up, we had the Gen G Cloud9 matchup. Cloud9 took this one 2-1. Fun fact, both of the times that these matches went up, they flipped a coin in the analyst table. And both of the times they came up on the underdogs, respectively, they came up on Dignitas and Cloud9. And they were right both times, and the coin was the only one to pick the winning team in both of these matches, which shows that these teams, they came ready to play. And they showed off for sure. So in the three maps, we had Gen G taking it 13-8 on Split, followed up by Ascent, where Cloud9 took it 13-5. And then on Bind, the tiebreaker map, we have Cloud9 taking it 13-6. And this was another one. This was kind of a slobber knocker. If a team won, they dominated in their win. They rolled over that other team. Specifically, Tens and Win are my showboat characters for today, followed up by Vice, who I don't think I've ever seen perform this well in his life. But I want to talk specifically about Cloud9, if you guys don't mind. I know Rumz got to watch a decent bit of this set with me. Smithel, I think you were trying to watch it a little bit during work.
Yeah, I tried
did you guys?
a little.
Yeah, did you guys see that Tens played Reyna for 3 maps in a row instead of Jet? Yeah. And mained rifle instead of picking up the op. He picked it up a couple times, but he main stayed as like a rifler for the most part. He dropped 59 kills across these 3 maps.
Wow.
Yeah, he dropped 20 kills basically every single map, followed up by Vice at 53. And what's the interesting part here is that his other teammates all went negative. Mitch went 38-40, which is, it's close, it's respectable, especially for the support kind of role that he plays. But Shinobi 32-37 and Relics at 28-40 on the entry roll. So Tens and Vice kind of threw the players on their back and really had to push through Win and GMD and Mikhail, who were trying their best to make ends work, but these guys are just firing on all cylinders in this tournament.
Yeah, you mentioned Tens being the Euro spotlight player for Cloud9, but I have to give it to Vice. I don't think that if Vice stepped up when they needed him to, that C9 wouldn't have had half the success that they did in today's matches. Tens is always going to perform. He's nuts. He's cracked. He's always going to take care of business. But seeing Vice come into his own element with a Sephir today and just getting able to consistently get picks and double kills, I think it really put C9 in a place where they were able to win this round, even when nobody called it for them.
But yeah, so Tens went 59, 37, and 14, averaging a ADR of 166. And yeah, Vice actually slightly outperformed him as far as the statistics go. He had an ADR of 169.3. So these guys played out of their minds. I hope that they can keep it up. This has been proven to be kind of a momentum-based game, pushing through. the rest of this tournament. So hopefully they can keep it up into day 2. That leaves the group run bracket. The upper bracket being Dignitas versus Cloud9 tomorrow. And then we have TSM versus Gen G. And the winner of TSM and Gen G, which I never thought I'd say that as a lower bracket semifinal match, will play the loser of Dignitas and Cloud9 to see who advances into the playoff bracket, as this is a double elimination tournament. Moving on from them, we have Group B. Starting off, we have Sentinels and Envy, and the coin was dethroned for Sentinels versus Envy. Sentinels taking it 2-0. The coin picked Envy. And Envy's kind of the new kid on the block. So I wasn't surprised that Sentinels won, but I am kind of surprised at how handedly they won, if that makes sense.
You mean by
so Envy
how
performed
easy they
pretty well
won?
their last couple of tournaments, and that you could tell that there was still some practice that kind of needed to come out. They still needed to mesh a little bit more together, but they were really making strides on that. And it feels like they just came in and just dropped the whole football and ran it backwards and kicked it to the other team on this one. Like,
I think it
That's-
could be a
that's
testament to
true.
just how good Sentinels are. I mean, you have to keep in mind this is a team that went overtime against TSM. Now TSM, don't know if I can speak up much for them after today's performance, but in the last
no,
series, they were the team to beat. And Sentinels was also the team to beat. So we saw this head-to-head clash in overtime. So Sentinels is not
No, that's for sure. But
a
I
give
expected
me
them to
team.
at least bring it to like 13-11, 13-10. Sentinels won 2-0, 13-9 on Haven, and 13-4 on Bind. They just kind of made them hold all the groceries and trip down the stairs. Like, it was not a pretty match at all for Bind. Lots of mistakes came out from Envy, a lot of positioning errors, and very swift to punish with Sentinels. Very clean game on Sentinels. And we have our top fragger on Envy coming in at 23 and 34. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeesh.
a lot of deaths, a lot of positioning errors, like I was talking about earlier. Surprised though, Sick came in as the top fragger on Sentinels, coming in at 36 and 23, followed very closely behind by the child prodigy Sinatra at 35 and 25. And you can say what you want about this kid Sinatra. He can be toxic, he can be rude, he can be, full of himself, but kid can play.
Yeah, you got to give it to him, regardless of his attitude towards any players of the game.
Yeah, especially
He's
rotating from Overwatch.
insanely good. Could be right.
Yeah.
Could be one of the next
I
Nitros,
think that
if I may be
I
so
want to
bold.
say that it's either Shazam or Sick is the IGL of Sentinels. They kind of have flip-flopped back and forth, so I don't know exactly who it was going into this tournament. Obviously, teams kind of keeping strategies under wraps, but Sinatra left the Overwatch League, picked up like 3 agents, and is just rolling over kids in this game. He's figured it out, and I think the difference is actually in his ability usage, his utils. It almost feels like every single time he throws a utility, he throws a flashbang as Phoenix, he throws a Molly, he throws a drone as a Sova or what have you. It has an impact. He's using it and it's meaningful every single time. And that's not something a lot of these CS guys can really say because they're used to just, chucking flashes and smokes like it's nothing and hoping that it works and using it because they got it. And he's used to this kind of semi-limited resource game of Overwatch where every ability that you toss out has a repercussion. And I think that mindset coming into this game has given him this kind of an advantage over some of the other guys, and that his natural aiming ability and ability to pick up whatever game he plays is just creating a superstar in this game. So definitely
Right.
my pick, I think, to win the tournament is going to be Sentinels. At least basically based off what I saw today, I think it's Sentinels. I think they're going to just walk through. I don't think they're going to lose a game. Not a game. I don't think they're going to lose a match. I think they're going to exit on top of the bracket, for sure, which is really fun. I don't know if you guys follow Twitter very closely, but about a match, about halfway through the second match, maybe a little bit afterwards, Sentinels their Twitter dropped a hype video for the rivalry between Sentinels and TSM, and they were like, I mean, they tweeted it and then they responded. They said, "You can't drop the first set after we post our rivalry video. Come on now." So that's a good one,
Shame.
definitely, for sure.
I don't
No, I don't think we
can
can either.
count
But
TSM out. They definitely dropped their first set on the last tournament series, and they still came out winning the whole thing. So that's not something we can't count them out too soon. But just judging off their performance today,
yeah,
we might be able to count them out. The team that I want to see and the team that I have a lot of confidence in going forward is Cloud9. I know they have a few things to work out, but if they could button down just those little, I think they're young players, so if they could button down those young player mistakes, like not pushing up too soon, just getting that little bit of combat patience, just having that patience and being able to sit on their heels just for a second longer, just not make any mistakes. I think they could be
I totally
serious
agree.
team to
You
be
can
reckoned
see
with.
it. Tens is kind of a phenom, and the way that he plays, he was really good at CS. He had some really good, LAN experience, and he has kind of that maturity notched underneath his belt. But I think the rest of these guys are still kind of figuring that out. I know some of them play tier 2 CS, tier 3 CS, that kind of thing, and are now coming over in this limelight, and they're like, oh, I got to perform. I got to keep my spot. I got to frag out. I got to make these, bombastic plays to post on Twitter. And a lot of that is slowing this disciplined kind of approach they probably have towards the game when they're not playing, up front and center, if that makes sense. So they've definitely started performing now that they've picked up their static fifth in Shinobi about a month ago, or a month and a half ago, I guess now, boasting a 67% win rate so far through the Ignition series, which is very impressive. So I'm excited to see what they're doing. And
it's very high.
I believe that, since they're on opposite sides of the brackets, we could very well see a Cloud9 versus Sentinels finals for the tournament, which would be phenomenal, at least in my opinion. And as we've been talking,
it'd be fun to see.
Can't talk about it too much, but Immortals and T1 have wrapped up their set. Immortals taking it 2-0. I'm not surprised by this one at all. Immortals won 13-3 on Bind, 13-7 on Ascent. So T1 picked up EU, or however you say his name. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anybody say it. I couldn't find it anywhere, so I'm trying my best not to butcher it. But he came in as a Brim and Omen. That's all he played, and so they shifted AZK to Jet. They left Crashies onto the Cypher. They moved Brax over to the Sova Killjoy role, which they did try out a couple Killjoy strategies, and then they moved Food over to this kind of entry fragger, and it just didn't work. Everybody looked uncomfortable. Nothing synergized well. It's almost like they had practiced for 2 days and said, "Okay, we got a tournament. Here we go," and that was it. The only one who really performed okay was Brax, which is I guess to be expected at this point.
I can't say that I'm surprised at the results of this one, but I can say that I'm a little disappointed. I would like to see T1 in the higher stages of tournaments because I know that they have it. They have a lot of talent. There's just a few things that they need to work out in the comp realm and the tactics realm to really put them up over that line, because I think that every individual player has the ability to do great things. They're just not.
And I think they're getting
there
the
way that they should be.
When Skadoodle comes back, I think that kind of core of Brax, AZK, and Skadoodle is going to really kind of take the rest of these guys kind of under the wing and really put everything together, because they have some of the brightest minds for attack FPS. AZK is a phenomenal IGL. Brax is a living prodigy with these kinds of games. His mechanical skill is off the charts, and Skadoodle doesn't miss when he's in his comfort zone and when he's playing correctly. And so with Skadoodle picking up a couple of extra agents to morph their strategies and everybody kind of moving back into the positions they want to be in, we could see a force. But with everybody shifting like this, I don't think they've got it in them. I wouldn't be surprised to see them exit this tournament 1-2. I also really wouldn't be surprised to see them exit 0-2. So for the T1 fans out there, I'm sorry. I don't have the faith in this one. I really don't. So that's all I kind of got so far for this
I don't
Pop
either.
Flash tournament. The matchups for Gen B, or not Gen B, Group B tomorrow is Sentinels versus Immortals in the top, and then Envy versus T1 in the secondary bracket. Kind of looking cut and dry over there. So, kind of moving on, we have some other esports news. Rumz, this is your big piece, man. This is what you've been looking forward to. I'm gonna let you deliver it, man. What
This
you
is
got
my
for
big
me?
piece. This is something that I've been very excited. I've been following Twitter very closely with. I graduated high school in Salt Lake City, so I'm very excited to see Space Station Gaming announcing their Valorant team. And it's something that I've been looking forward to. I've been kind of keeping a close eye on. Space Station has been my favorite esports team next to Cloud9 through Smite, through Rocket League, through just about every other pro scene. So I'm very excited to see their announcement of the Valorant team. They had the previous Bloom roster. They're still down one, missing an operator, namely, but they have signed currently Seth, who is a Cypher main, Roka, the entry and Reyna main.
He's
Excited
nutty.
to see him play, seeing him come up with some good plays. Insky with the smoke support, the Brim and the Omen. He's very young, very great mechanically player, but I'm excited to see what he can come up with. And then Kaplan, who seems to be kind of undecided at this point, seems mainly to be playing a Cypher / Sova role, so more of the support type, kind of gather intel kind of player. And we're still missing that fifth player, so I'm very excited to keep a close eye on that and see what SSG has to come up with it. But I'm very excited about this team.
Are there
guys.
any rumors about who the fifth's going to be, or?
Not so far, man. I've kept my ear to the ground trying to talk to the people that I know. Previously, Lasky was the operator, but he played a more passive operator, using things like Omen and Sage, kind of the same role as Skadoodle was playing. And they really wanted a Jet. They wanted to play the meta the way it was evolving into, and he just didn't have the Jet ready. So they dropped him. He's been working on it on his stream. I've kind of watched. He's gets up and streams when I get up for work, so I catch it while I'm getting ready for work, that kind of thing. His Jet's coming along super nice. I don't think that they're going to re-sign Lasky just because he was already there and it didn't work. They probably want to go a new route. I would really be happy to see Lasky get picked up by 100 Thieves. He's got a lot of tier 2, tier 1.5 esports experience. He's got a lot of play time in ESEA. He's mature as a player. He's got the mentality to play the game the way it needs to be played. And 100 Thieves needs an opera. So
They do.
I think that'd be a great pickup for them, but they haven't made any noise at all. Radio silence from them as far as Valorant goes. So just sitting on Hiko and Nitro at the moment. But yeah, this is super stoked. I'm always stoked to see extra organizations kind of pour into this, try to get an early footing, especially if they come out with like a Valorant championship series or something like that, akin to like the LCS once COVID goes away and they have LAN centers again. Getting that early name in there with the Ignition series for the buy-in, I think is super important.
And I think it's very interesting, and we talked about this last episode. We see this evolving esports with Valorant, and it's still such a young game. I won't beat a dead horse because we talked about it last week, but such a young game, and we see all these organizations pouring into it. It's very exciting for the future of Valorant esports.
Exactly. But that about wraps it up for my Valorant section on this scripts that we got going so far. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any feedback on that, let us know. But I want to talk about some non-Valorant news. We have lives. We do other things occasionally, or at least I do. Rumz maybe not, but at least I do. Spithel, you've had a busy week following some news, my man.
So
What you keeping your eyes on?
So, I mean, we'll say the busy week is probably going to be next week, the biggest busier one, because Gamescom 2020 kicks off tomorrow, and it goes for 3 days. So I fully expect some big announcements coming from there, especially with it being a kind of new generation year in terms of Xbox and PlayStation. So I'd expect to maybe hear a little bit of more news about what everybody's working on and what's going on that way. It's typically one of the major showcases that developers like to sneak a couple releases out or put some news. So I'm excited to see kind of what's coming out of Gamescom here in the coming days. Also, today there was a Nintendo Direct Mini, so as most people know,
Oh, I
Nintendo,
missed that.
yeah, they like doing their own little thing. It wasn't super exciting. They definitely focused on some of their smaller developers, and said kind of, what's on the works. There were a couple things that kind of stood out to me. They're releasing a Kingdom Hearts rhythm type game, so it's gonna be called Melody of
Gosh.
Memory. And I know Kingdom Hearts is kind of big. I personally was never super big into it. I played it, but never
Just
dug
let
its
it.
claws into me.
Just let it be. Just leave it alone.
but
It was fine.
they're releasing it, and it looks very weird. I would definitely recommend looking at it, at least if you're a Kingdom Hearts person. I also know World of Tanks is a big game, and that got released today. That was released at the time of the Direct Mini. Also, anime fans, the Jump Force game is going to be coming to Switch, I believe, in 2 days. I think on Friday, the 28th, it comes. So that's not one that I've played, but I'm a fighting game fan and I'm an anime fan, so I'm definitely planning on checking that one out. And then, I don't know if this game was before your times, but I definitely remember playing it on the GameCube growing up. The Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. They're doing a remake of that, and they're releasing it on Switch. So they previewed that out a little bit too. So that's an exciting bit and something that I'm excited to kind of see come back. But other than that, I know you have it in your news section, but Fall Guys is kind of exploded like crazy this week. I'm sure everybody's playing it or have seen videos of people playing it. I jumped on the bandwagon. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. I do have the Fall Guys explosion. Any game came out of nowhere. Plays into that BR kind of category that people wanted, but it's a platformer, which is, I guess, a lot of people are like, oh, it's a platformer, whatever. And then you play the platformer, and then you get super pissed because you miss a jump by an inch and then fall to your death. And you have to go again because you're like, oh, I'm better than this game. And then you've played it for 3 hours and still haven't gotten a dub, or you play it for 7 days
Yeah,
and
the
still
best
didn't
way
get a dub.
the best way I have to describe it, and it's fun because my wife actually played it, and she's not a big gamer.
Yeah.
Is it's basically the show Wipeout, but in video game form.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
no, that's pretty much it.
it's just stupid fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's super fun. Also, what I had going on, the Summer Games Done Quick recently concluded. They raised $2.3 million for charity this year, which is just absolutely nuts. If those of you who don't know, Games Done Quick is a speedrunning event that they raise money for charity. They do all kinds of games, different runs, different challenges, where you can really get involved with the scene and see what exactly is going on. I don't personally speed run, but I like to watch speed runs because it takes a
Very good
certain
dudes
amount
to
of
watch.
skills sets that I really admire, and the people and the determination they have. Outside of that, films are starting to come back. I'm a big movie buff. I love the theater, and I love the movie theaters. Specifically, what I got my eye on, being a comic book nerd as well, is the new Batman movie trailer. Specifically, the Batman movie trailer with Robert Pattinson. They finally released it. Yeah, don't give me that look. Did you not know that?
Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, dude.
No,
Edward from
I was not
Twilight,
aware.
Cedric Diggory, the man himself, is Bruce Wayne,
Twilight meets
adding it under
Batman.
his belt. Yes, so
Uh,
he is playing Bruce
that
Wayne.
is insane.
It's he looks really disheveled in some of the screenshots that I've seen, but he's facing the Riddler as the primary villain of this movie, which if you've read the comics, the Bruce Wayne that comes into contact with the Riddler is also very disheveled and is driven kind of almost mad by this villain before he kind of catches him. And they've painted the Riddler in this twisted kind of dark light that the DC has been kind of going with along these grittier films, and made him really menacing and quite literally scary to kind of come into contact with. I would definitely go give it a watch. It's on YouTube. Um, it's amazing. I really am hoping for at least a PG-13. I know it's going to get a PG-13, but I really want it to be an R, just so they can kind of go ham with it a little bit.
Mm.
But from the trailer, they're pushing some boundaries, which makes me excited as a film geek. I like it when productions do different stuff. And then wrapping up my section, I have the New World beta streams. New World finally allowed the content creators to start showing off their game. New World is a MMO from Amazon, and I'm a big, big, big MMO fan. I'm an MMO junkie. I get addicted. I spend countless numbers of hours and meaningless content over and over and over again. And New World is very Skyrim-esque for those of you that liked Oblivion and stuff like that. And man, it's not my cup of tea. I don't like the carry weight. I don't like the non-defined classes. It's very extra in the step of direction that I'm just not a fan of. but I see the appeal, and it's a real pretty game. It's very well put together, that's for sure. So definitely go and check those out. I know Asmongold is streaming it. Summit's been streaming it. You can definitely find some videos and content out there if you want some opinions. And then Rumz, I have something out of left field that you've got on my list.
Sure.
What you talking about, boss?
So my main interest this week has been Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 with its release. And it's been seeing a lot of rave reviews and some not so rave reviews.
Yeah.
The rave reviews are mainly from those who can afford to run it because it's a very graphically demanding PC. It is the open world of open worlds. Yeah. It is quite literally the open world.
Yeah.
So it takes a pretty beast of a computer system to be able to run this and run it beautifully. I think reading through one review, there was somebody with a 2080 Ti and a lackluster processor that just wasn't necessarily able to run this game on Ultra. And I think that's absolutely insane. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 is going to be the new benchmark for determining the goodness of your hardware, much like Crysis was just a couple years ago, much like Minecraft was in the 2007, 2008 time period. So I'm excited. I really do want to try it. I don't think that my computer could run it, but it is something that I'm looking forward to getting my hands on.
So I have the spec list that was updated November 19th. This is the recommended spec, right? Is the Ryzen 5 1500, the Intel i5 8400, and then the effective 970 series, the 4 GB, 6 GB cards. And that's supposed to be like 60 FPS at a medium and some other stuff scaled down.
Sheesh.
But their ideal spec is the Ryzen 7 2700 and the Intel i7 9800X, which is their like top of the line, and then the 8 GB to 12 GB 2080 series cards. And that's where you're supposed to be kind of living it up with the ideal performance of like ultra or high end specs, 60 FPS.
Is that all?
Locking in. Yeah, I know. Is that all? And
that's all it takes.
They've also said that in order to maximize that performance, you need to put the game on an SSD.
Jesus.
In which you need 150 gigabytes of space on an SSD to get the best performance out of the game.
Man.
So yeah,
That's
it's
insane.
very, very demanding, to say the very least.
But to be fair, I feel like Flight Simulator is one of those things that whenever I picture people that play it, they have like a whole room dedicated to like the joysticks and like the monitors surrounding them.
When I get this, believe me, I'm gonna get a yoke.
Yep.
And I'm going to get a couple pedals. I'm going to sit my happy ass down in the chair, and I'm going to fly my little Cessna halfway across the nation, and I'm gonna get a beer while I'm at it, so that I can drink beer and fly a plane.
And not get in trouble.
Great idea. Just kidding. Don't do that, please. Don't do that.
You get to see Tahiti for the first time and only time.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And you have one more interesting talking point as FPS fans that I think we're gonna actually spend some time on.
So this was a pretty recent announcement, Black Ops Cold War.
Yep.
It is supposed to be a direct sequel to Black Ops 1.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
I have some concerns with this.
Okay. I want to get your opinion.
My main concern is that we just had a Call of Duty release last year.
Well, they're yearly games.
Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah.
Come on.
I guess that's fair enough. I haven't played a lot of COD since Modern Warfare 2. I just kind of dated myself a little bit. But Modern Warfare 2 was my last baby for Call of Duty.
Yeah.
I wanted to come home every day and play Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. It was my life. It consumed me for a little bit. So we had a great COD last year, right? I think the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare that was just dropped last year, it's a beautiful game. I think it's one of the best renditions of Call of Duty we've seen within the last 5 years. And I have no issues with the last year's release. So I'm kind of troubled to see what exactly they can come up with in Cold War.
Yep.
Just because my standard's kind of high with last year's release.
It's understandable. Smith, what do you think?
So I find it interesting that you said that you have no issues with last year's release. So I feel like in terms of actual game, last year's Call of Duty was fantastic. I very quickly jumped off of it though, just because the process you had to go through anytime that game updated was an absolute nightmare.
180 gigabyte downloads.
Like I just couldn't sit there. Like again, and maybe it's just like a me problem because I have like a wife and a family and kids and all that kind of shit. But like my time to game is very much either limited to like super early morning, like 5 a.m. or like 8:30 at night, like to maybe 10 or 11. And so going to play COD and be like, okay, I'm gonna play. I got an hour. And you pop it on, it's like, okay, I'm downloading the patch. That takes, 20 minutes, whatever the case may be. And then it's like, oh, now I have to, like, install the patch again. And that would take sometimes upwards of, like, 3 to 4 hours. And I swear,
so, like,
it was every
it
time I
reinstalls
played.
the game.
Yeah, like, every time I went to turn it on, I felt like there was a patch. And I'm like,
yeah,
this isn't worth it. There's enough
it's
other
not optimized.
good games out there that I'm
Right.
not going to sit here and waste, one night a week just updating this game.
Right.
And so that was my big problem with it, is I wish it wasn't that way.
And I would agree. I would agree with you there. It seems like shortly after launch, there was just patch after patch after patch. And it's one thing if I say patch and I mean patch. I don't mean hotfix. I mean patch, where the patch was several gigabytes. I mean, I think frequently it was a 20 gigabyte update almost every time I turned on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I don't have any issues with the game itself. I do have the issues with the way Activision Blizzard released it with so many issues. It's almost like they didn't even really bug test their game necessarily, but I don't think they were changing a lot of bugs. I think there was a lot of balancing issues that they had. There were a lot of rifles that were right. The shotguns that were in the game were so stupid powerful. And yeah, so they had a lot of balancing issues. They had some game-breaking bugs, but I don't fault that to the game. I just fault that to the developers' release schedule.
Yeah, I enjoyed Modern Warfare. Primarily, I really enjoyed the story. I do like to play the Call of Duties for the story at least once. I think they have some pretty good theatrics. I think they have a good storyline for the most part. I'm excited for the story content to come out of Cold War, because Black Ops has always had a very, very good storyline in every single one of its games. And they just do a really good job. Also, zombies. I really hope that they kind of go the same route as, what is it? The BR, right? For Warzone. So it's called Warzone. Modern Warfare, yeah. So Warzone was free if you didn't buy the game. I really hope they do you get zombies for like you do free zombies, or something along those lines, so that you don't have to like necessarily get the game, the whole 280 gigabyte game or whatever it's going to be, just to play zombies if you want to do that. Because if they do that, I'm not going to buy it. I just won't. I don't play it enough. I'm focused on other FPSs.
Yeah.
I think so with a COD coming out every year, I remember the reason why was because two companies had equal rights to the Call of Duty name, which was Infinity Ward and Treyarch. And they would alternate years to release their version of the game, and every year they were great games. Modern Warfare was really great. World at War was phenomenal. Modern Warfare 2 was really awesome. Black Ops was amazing. Modern Warfare 3 was pretty good because it had specialists and nukes that didn't end the game. And it kind of kept along this route. But I think we're at the point where I think the games really need to be bi-yearly.
Yeah.
Primarily for the sake of the CDL, which is the Call of Duty League, and the way that they have it established. Because changing the game so often, or having this nonchalant approach to your balancing and patching as if the game's only going to be out a year, we can let some of this stuff slide, is lazy development. And it'll be a detriment to their esports scene, which is where they're planning to try to make more money. Warzone is the only reason that Modern Warfare was as successful as it was, and they drew in so many players and had the revenue that they did. If they hadn't done that, then that game would have almost assuredly barely come out positive, which I think goes to show, just how much effort you need to put into these games now. And I have the same problem with the Pokemon franchise. They shouldn't come out with a game every year. They should come out with a game every other year and add on to their games that they've got, or make the games have enough replayability and value to them to where you can play them for 2 years before going, okay, well, what else you got? And I think Call of Duty's in that same boat, especially with the professional scene being the way that it is with the franchise league and the championship series. So that's something I'd like to see maybe change, even though I know it won't, or at least probably won't. So, but that's all I got. Is that all you got?
That's all I have, man.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps up week number 2 of the One Time Gaming Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Solemn FPS. You can find me at Twitch and Twitter, Solemn FPS, and keep up with me, updates on, work or school or, the general things that I find grievances with, or catch me when I'm streaming. Smith, where can they find you?
Twitter.com. I am at Smithel Gaming, or you can just watch me on Twitch, primarily streaming Dungeons and Dragons right now. Twitch.tv/Smithel.
And then Rumz, where you at, man?
I am at Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and just about every other social media platform you can think of. Actual Rumz, ACTUALRUMZ, all one word.
Awesome. And as always, follow the show at the One Tap Cast on Twitter, and you can find us at the One Tap Podcast on YouTube. And if you find us on Twitter, join the Discord. Let us know what you're up to. Play a couple games with us. We'd love to see you. And as always, have a great week. We'll catch you next time.
Have a good one.
Bye, guys.